In the 19th century, the West made a devastating but unforeseeable mistake that we are now paying dearly for: the introduction of radically materialist Western imperialist capitalism to China. Reactionary movements arose to violently oppose this new idea, but in the ideological war of attrition, it seems to have won out. China in recent decades has taken firm hold of this idea and ran with it. The West is in the lead, but China has certain advantages that it's consciously using to propel itself ahead. In the state the West currently finds itself, we're powerless to stop them. China's actions in the South China Sea, Southeast Asia, Africa, Australia, and in trade ports around the world paint a clear picture of the world China envisions for the not-so-distant future, one in which China overpowers the West in economic might and hard control of resource-rich territory. Military might and technological superiority are likely close behind. The point here isn't to say that China will one day declare war on and defeat the United States. They won't do that. They will be able to, however, and that's when political solutions to the Chinese problem come to an end. China will be able to bully the world into submission the same way we've bullied the world into submission for the past century. And who in the West, who in the world, honestly, can say that they'd prefer a Chinese hyperpower to a United States hyperpower? The main threat from China will be that of political and cultural influence. There is an existential horror that accompanies the Chinese method of control. The Chinese are happy to live under this regime of inescapable technological slavery, mass surveillance, and harsh physical punishment, but Westerners are not. Sons and daughters of the West would find these conditions to be totally intolerable. Meanwhile, however, our parasitic elite implement these methods of control in the shadows. Big tech, in league with the political elite, have created a new, easily controllable public space on the internet that people have become dependent on in order to succeed in modern society. The Western political and technocratic elite are big fans of what they see in China and are slowly restructuring our society to be just as suppressive, with a slightly happier color palette. It should come as a surprise to nobody that the Chinese will prove better at constructing efficient economies with their higher mathematical intelligence and their political unity. 1.4 billion Chinese people will soon be operating a modern economy with a modern military, all united under a single political entity. Meanwhile, in the West, we're made up of around 800 million people spread across 20 or so different political entities with varying degrees of sovereignty in Western and Southern Europe and the Anglosphere core. The Chinese also have higher reproductive health. Despite the two-child limit, we're likely to see 100 million more Chinese in the next 15 years if current trends continue. Meanwhile, in the West, we can't seem to keep our population stable without the immigration of alien peoples. Of course, a perpetually rising population isn't necessarily required to live comfortably in a post-industrial society like the West, but world domination between two high-functioning groups is ultimately a numbers game, and China's got the numbers. At the same time Western birth rates drop, immigration is increasing the ethnic division within the West. A double negative, and not a double negative that's going to make a positive. We may have our alliances and treaties and overarching Western culture and heritage, but we're still smaller and more divided, and our global influence is on a downwards trend. China is ascendant. Much progress has been made, however, in uniting some of these politically divided areas. The political unity of Europe has been recognized as inevitable by the majority of the Western elite since the fall of the Roman Empire. The reunification of the empire must occur for the sake of our common defense and destiny. We've wasted centuries fighting over which European nation gets to be the one to unify Europe. The UK has always been sort of an outsider in this. They have a very self-deterministic spirit, which I suppose can be put up with as long as they never define themselves in opposition to the European core. The 20th century was destined to be the time in which European unity finally reemerged. It would have occurred, whether through neoliberalism, as it did, or National Socialism, as it was going to. Similar, less natural unities have been attempted on the North American continent in the form of the North American Union, championed in private by the Clinton and Bush administrations. This never would have been accepted by the people. The ethno-cultural differences between Mexico and the rest of North America are just too strong. What should instead be pursued is an Anglosphere Union. There's no cultural, ethnic, or religious reason for the United States and Canada to be separate countries. As travel speeds have improved and our world has become increasingly connected, it's become difficult to argue against Australia and New Zealand also being included. The right-wing reaction to the neoliberal Western order, at least in our circles, has overwhelmingly been in favor of ethno-nationalist separatism and isolationism. While aspects of these would be positive and should be adopted into the future system, they are not the answer to the world we face today. In a world where size and numbers matter, and in which so many are aligned against us, Western disunity cannot be tolerated. It's an existential problem. The modern trend toward Western political unity should not be slowed, it should not be reversed, it should be accelerated. The only thing the right should take issue with is who is in power right now. It should be obvious to anyone that the nation on which has fallen the responsibility to unify the Anglosphere is the United States. Only the United States has the military might and cultural influence necessary to achieve such a monumental task. The quickest way to achieve this would be, frankly, through force, but that's completely unnecessary. As I've stated before, there are no cultural, ethnic, or religious reasons for the Anglosphere to be politically divided. We are the same people with the same attitudes toward life, and we might as well act as a single entity. I'll get hate probably for saying this from petty nationalists in the comments, but the differences that do exist are so insignificant they're not worth worrying about. A European Union-esque political structure could be formed for the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, with the United States in an unquestioned position of dominance, similar to Germany and the EU. I suspect once the European Union and Anglosphere unions have been fully formed, all the pressure would be in favor of the unification of these two unions, until the Empire of the West, likely with its capital in Washington, has been realized, but that's thinking a bit further into the future. This Anglosphere Union is a unification that shouldn't frighten anybody. It would be of immense benefit to all of its citizens. It will result in no noticeable or at least significant shift in the culture or political style of any of the member nations, even if the American structure becomes uniform across the Union, which it probably will. If this is the case, then the Australian and Canadian people and the people of New Zealand would see an expansion of their rights, as the protections in the American Bill of Rights would be extended to everybody. Safety would be ensured by a military every nation contributes to. The vast, resource-rich, empty expanses of the three largest Anglosphere nations would provide the Anglosphere with total resource self-sufficiency. The current total land area of the United States is 3.8 million square miles. The total land area of the Anglosphere Union would be 10.7 million square miles. Meanwhile, the total population would be around 400 million. The Anglosphere Union would represent an area of land almost triple the size of the United States, with only 22% more people than the United States. Talk about living space. It sounds like an impossible task, a pipe dream, but the truth is, not only is it in our interest, but it's in the interest of our elites as well. An all-encompassing global state has been the ultimate idealistic end goal for 75 years openly, and probably secretly much longer than that. The Anglosphere Union, like the European Union and the African Union and all other unions in the works, will objectively bring them closer to their goal, will it not? And we'll much sooner see an open and properly functioning Anglosphere Union than we will a North American Union, including Mexico. My point is, we can get the elite on our side on this. This isn't an uphill task. This is something that the trends of the recent decades of Western history seem to be in favor of. In no other ethnic, linguistic subgroup of Europeans do you find as much disunity as you do among the English-speaking offspring nations of the British Empire. It's unnatural for us to be divided like this, and it must, and it will, come to an end. The continued ability of our people to shape their own destiny depends on Western unity. As the old American revolutionary slogan that unified the colonies goes, join or die.